All right, so now it's time to connect the elevator and the rudder. So I'm going to use these Great Plains control horns, but I have a little bit of an issue. So the elevator is fine. So if you can see, the elevator is going to come down here, and then I'll have the control horn connected to this. But the problem with the rudder I have is that if you can look at it like this, there you go, you can kind of see this, is that for the slot that comes out with the control horn, the control rod, it doesn't quite meet, right, the rudder. So I'm going to have to do a modification to this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this control rod about somewhere back in here somewhere, the blue part. I'm going to cut this out. Then I'm going to give myself, of course, a little bit of the yellow. The inner rod is going to be coming out about 1 inch or so. But then I'm going to go ahead and use this this wire. It's threaded on one side, and I'm going to thread it into the yellow tubing, and I'm going to then sort of bend this thing. And I'm going to create sort of a little. I'm going to have to do it this way. There's no other way to do it. I'm going to have to create sort of like a little bend, or like a little dog leg, to kind of bring it up to a higher point so that I can engage the control horn on the rudder. So that's what I have to do on this side. It's not a big deal, but so anyhow, I'll do that, and that'll get the rudder connected. But the elevator will be straightforward and not a real big deal. So let's pop these guys open. These again are they're small size Great Plains control horns. Pop this open. I'll just throw this in my little hardware bin. Okay, so there's my little control horn. Let me cut this piece off and get it sort of cleaned up. Okay, so the way that you set these up is you put them on the control surface so that the holes are right above the hinge line. And that way you have sort of an equal amount. They kind of, I guess they center right above the hinge line, so it gives you a more equal movement on both directions. If you had it further back or further out, it wouldn't work as good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to cut my control rod kind of where I think it's going to be, and then I'll connect it to the control horn, and then that'll give me the way that I can kind of locate it on the elevator, and then mark it and drill it and then put it on. Okay, so what I did is I cut these tubes back a little bit on those blue ones, and now for the elevator, I'm going to use, what I do is I attach my little clevis assembly with the rod inside of it, the threaded rod, and that's going to give me a way to sort of judge where I need to put it. So I'm going to bring it like right about here. You can see that. Boy, it's kind of hard to see that, right? So I'm just going to see how I'm doing that. I'm going to use this as just basically a way to kind of estimate where I need to go, and then I'll go ahead and cut the control rod to fit that. So all I have to do is just put this down. May not be the best angle, but I put my control horn on there so it's centered, so that the holes are above the hinge line, and that's about where I need to be, right there, pretty much right about there. And then I can go ahead and I can mark my control rod. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room. I'm going to go like right about here. Okay, and as I do this, I want to make sure that my servos are staying centered, and they don't get, so you don't want to do this with your servos off, or if you do have them off, you need to check it before you make your final connections. But when I'm making measurements and such, I leave them on, and I use it, and I just keep checking them and make sure that I'm centered. So I know that my elevator is centered, and that my connection here is going to be in the right location when I cut it, which is going to be right about there. So I'm going to cut this off right here, and I can thread in the rod then. So I'll just clip this here like that. All right, so I'm going to have to do this. It's going to be kind of hard to do this on camera, so I'm just going to take this off and I'll thread it in here, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I threaded this in, and now I can put it back in here. this, hook it back up. Again, I'm going to check it. Well, I can tell right now I may be too close. So I'll put this right about here. Yeah, so I'm going to have to make, oops, I'm going to make an adjustment on this. All right, so let me take this out and make an adjustment. Okay, so I got this cut to the right length, I think, and I'll just thread this back on here. Easy to thread this. I'll probably put some thread lock on this once I do my final check of everything. All right, so this is going to be like this. Keep going here. All right, and keep going. Looks like I still have a lot of room to work here. Probably too much. Somewhere right about there. Okay. So that'll work just like that. It's kind of hard to see. I realize that. It's not the best setup I have. But so that's going to go just like that. Then I'll just use this to mark my holes for the screws that go into the little back plate. All right, so I'm going to use this little my pin vise with the proper size drill bit, which is going to be the same diameter, a little bit smaller than the holes on the plate on the bottom of the control horn. And then I'll line it up where I want to put it here on my elevator. It's going to be right about there. And then I'll just mark it here real quick. I'll do one. And I can come back and drill it out, but I just want to make sure that I got them marked in the right location. Right here. Just balsa so it really goes through easy into my finger. Okay. All right, so let me check this. Okay, so I got the holes drilled out. This is going to be a little awkward. All right, so to make this a little less awkward, easier to work, I'm going to go ahead and start these. I'll start the screws on the control horn, and I'll get them through a little ways, and then I can just kind of plug them into the hole on the elevator. So let me find my screwdriver. This one's kind of big. Problem with having a very messy table like I have right now is it makes it really hard to find stuff. That's why I like keeping organized. Okay, so I'm not going to go too far. I'll go like right there, and I'll go this side over here. I realize I'm working with little small parts and it may be hard to see what I'm doing. Apologize. I don't want to go too far in because if they come on, if they go on an angle or weird, then they won't line up. So I just want to get them just kind of started like that. Okay. And now I'll put them on here. And just like with the, I don't want to go completely all the way with the screw all the way through too far. I only want to just get it to barely come out the other side, because it'll do the same thing. If it goes in crooked, then I won't be able to get that little back plate on it. Okay, so let's do this right here. That should be good like that. Now I'm going to flip this thing over. Okay, so here's a little back plate that goes on this side. I'll just hold this with my finger. And I'm going to have to flip this guy over. Yeah, like that. And screw this in. Get that one going. This one going. I don't want to crush the wood. Just want to get it firm. And this isn't going to go anywhere, so it's good. I'll probably have to cut this back here. Yeah, I got to come down a little further here. So there we go. Now, this control horn is a little bit on an angle. That's okay. It'll be fine. and it'll hook like this. So now I can take off the, let me pop off the clevis and screw that on. Then obviously I can make my adjustments. I like to set it on the second hole from the outward side, or the outermost hole. So I like to set it on the second from the outermost hole as a starting point for my adjustments. Then I'm just going to have to eyeball it, because I'm going to have to take some time and make sure everything's lined up. But this is going to get me my rough point. In fact, I think that's, I'll tell you what, you can tell already I'm low. Okay, put in a little bit more. We'll do about there. Okay. All right, let me hook up my battery and check my check it. All right, so here we go. All right. Looks like it's doing pretty good. Got a lot of good movement on here. I do have a little bit of a bend in here because it's flexible. And like I said, I have a little bit of angle on the control horn. That's okay. It's not going to make a big deal. I'd rather have that than have it bend too much. Now I just have to hook up the rudder. Shoosh. So I was realizing that my workspace was getting a little bit chaotic, so I did a quick little sort of cleanup so I have a little bit of more order in what the heck I'm doing here. I spent half my time looking for stuff, so I tried to clean things up a little bit. But anyhow, let's go ahead and we'll move on with this little change I have to do. So as I mentioned, I'm going to use a piece of control rod wire, and I'm going to have to sort of kind of just bend this so it matches and fits and aligns with the rudder. So let me do this. I'm going to have to cut this probably about pretty close, actually, because I don't want it coming too far out. And then I'll go ahead and create the wire that I need to kind of get it over there to the right location. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cut this. I'm going to mark this on my outside. I'm actually going to cut this yellow rod back here a little bit, because the reason I want to do that is because this is going to be, it's going to thread into the yellow rod, and that sort of like connection isn't necessarily the best kind of connection. It can kind of like flex a little bit. So I'm going to make that connection inside of the blue tubing, or the outside kind of conduit, and that'll help kind of give me some support. So I'm going to take this off. It's going to go in here like that, and then I'm going to then I'm just going to bend this wire so that it can meet the rudder, and hopefully it'll look okay. But we don't have much choice. Pull them out, and where's my mark? My mark is right there. So I'm going to cut it about an inch in. I'm going to put it maybe a little over an inch, right about there. And then I'm going to thread this onto here. All right, so I have this threaded. It's back in here. I fed it through again. And now I'll just go ahead and just make some bends and get it up to that location, and we should be good to go. You know, when I'm doing stuff like this too, this is all sort of like my little modifications. This is just for just kind of sharing what I'm doing. There's so many different ways to do this stuff. I mean, I'm sure if you're watching this, you could have other ideas and everything. So that's fine. I'm just doing it this way. This will work out for me, and see how it goes. Okay, well, before I can bend the wire, I decided to go ahead and put on this other control horn, and I'm going to be using the easy connector like I mentioned. And I did this just because this will help me line up where the rod's got to go as I bend it. So I did the same thing as I did on the other. So now I'm just going to go ahead and start cut this rod back, and I'm going to bend it to sort of fit the best way. One thing I got to watch out for is when you're bending a rod, when you're bending something like this, you got to make your bend. You got to make your bend far enough out so that when the rod goes in this direction, the bend doesn't engage or get kind of caught up in the tubing, in the control rod conduit. So the first bend has to happen somewhere kind of out here. This way there's a straight shot back into the control tubing, and it won't get bound up. So I'll probably put my bend somewhere about an inch or so back here, and then go that way. Okay, well there it is. It's actually a little bit easier than I thought it was going to be, so I just made that sort of dog leg in there. I gave myself a little bit of room with the wire coming out, so I have a little room to work for adjustments. I may cut that back a little bit. Again, like I mentioned, I marked sort of like when I bring this all the way in, I marked the furthest point in, and I wanted to make my first bend outside of that line, which would be outside here like I did it here. If I had made that bend, if I had made this bend obviously back in here, then when I pulled it into the control rod, it would get bound up. So you want to make your first bend far enough away out, and so it looks like it's doing pretty good. Of course, the rudder's working nicely. And then, as you remember, we had that we had the tail wheel connection down here. So there's our tail wheel. Oops. And then our elevator. So things seem to be working pretty good. So now I just need to move on to the ailerons. All right, so now I'm ready to go ahead and put the aileron connections on. So I have the servo hooked up, and I'm going to be using these control linkages. These again, this is wire with the clevis on here, and then the way they attach to the wires on the ailerons are with these little, I forget what they call these little guys. But you screw this on, then it has a little hole for the clevis to hook into, and then I'm going to attach it to the aileron servo arm with these little sort of quick connectors. These kind of make a little L shape and you snap them on. So I'll show how that works. But that's going to be the basic thing. So the first thing I need to do is screw these things on, and then go from there. So let's put these guys on. Okay, so inside the fuselage I have about 1.5 inches before I sort of get in the way of the other stuff that's in there. So I'm going to give myself I'm going to put myself at about 1 inch for my starting point for my connections, and hopefully that'll clear everything. And then these guys are going to go like this on here, and then I'm just going to have to bend it to put my little put this little retainer on. These are pretty simple. They just snap on like this, and then you just bend it like a little L where it needs to go on the aileron. That's an easy hookup. So let me go ahead and get this kind of set up here. Okay, so here are my 2 connections, and I just got them in the approximate right location. And they're going to be going like this, pop, 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 pop. So let's check my aileron. So I'm trying to check my direction. So if I go to the right, my servo arm should move up, which should push my right aileron up, which will push my wing down, which means I'll roll to the right. So I should be okay there. I'll check it all at the end, but so that's good like that. Okay, so I think I've got my direction correct on my aileron servo. I did a little bit of trimming to make it sure it's nice and perpendicular. And then I'll go ahead and now I'll set these linkages up. Okay, so now I just have to mark on my control rod where I want them to make their bend. Now these aren't going to be perfect on this side because it's just a little bit inconsistencies with the alignment and such. That's not a big deal, but I am going to go ahead and mark it. I'm going to start on, this is a long control horn, so I'm going to start it on the this sort of third one from the end. So let me go ahead and mark these. I want this one to come up a little bit, so I'm going to go right here, bend. I want this one to come down a little bit, so I'm going to put my bend. Okay, so now I just marked them kind of where they're going to line up, and I'm trying to use my eyes as best as possible to sort of line these up a little bit so they're both about the same. It's not going to be perfect. I'm going to have to wait until I get it all done to make the final adjustments, but right now I think I got it pretty much where I want it on both of these control linkages. So I got these marked, and I'm going to bend them and cut them. Alright, so I got to do about a 90-degree angle on this. Gotta hold it nice and tight. About like that. Check that one. I'm going to cut off about this much on it right now. I can cut more later, but I'm just going to get it close. Get this guy out of the way. And this one I'm going to do the same thing. Okay. Those are going to go here and here. All right, so let me make a few adjustments to these connections, and then we'll get them linked up. Okay, so let me make sure this is in the right location. Servo. Looks like that. Okay. So the way these work is they go on like this. Pretty simple. And like that. In fact, I can do this, give them a little test run here. Ooh, nice. Okay, great. All right, so I have room to make adjustments in the clevis connection. That's why I go extra. That's why I screw it in a little bit further. So this way I can back it out if I have to, or I can take it out. But I give myself a little bit of room to work with. So these should be okay. I can tell you right now, this one's going to have to come in a little bit. So I can work on that. It's not a big deal. Okay. So let me go ahead and get this. So the way these go on here, let me see. Got plenty of room. Yeah, so what these do is these pop on like this. These go underneath here. If you can see that. Go underneath. Real simple. And they just snap on. Like that. And then this one does the same thing on this side. It's going to go, hopefully you can see that. Goes under here. And those just, obviously, they just retain it and they hold it nicely. Let's go like that. Good. And now we're good to go. Let's see here. Okay. So I'm going to leave it just like this for now, and I'll come back and I will make the final adjustments. I got to get everything put together. I got to get the wing on and do all my final adjustments last, and do all the fine tuning of adjusting all this stuff. But right now we have this the aileron set up in a nice kind of the rough setting, and it's ready for the next step. Okay, so I got all the control surfaces hooked up and the servos hooked up and ready to go. They're all in there sort of on their rough settings. Obviously I'm going to have to come back and do the fine tuning and make sure all the throws are correct and everything else. But for right now everything is hooked up. So here is the elevator and the rudder working nice. Then the ailerons. Now I just put the wing on top of this, so I need to make sure that it's not kind of getting bound up with some wires or something inside the fuselage. So I have to make sure I have proper clearance. But again, the ailerons are working nicely. And then of course the throttle. So that's good. So so now I'm ready to start kind of finishing up this build. I think I'm getting pretty close, and I think it's looking pretty good. So the next video, it's going to be things like putting the wheels on, putting the muffler, finishing, getting the engine kind of set up, and then just basically the final stages. You know, putting in the receiver and the battery pack, make sure everything's good there. Yeah, so it's coming along nicely. I think I'm almost finished, and I'm really looking forward to the maiden flight. And yeah, so anyhow, thanks for watching. This has been a long video going through all the little details. And if you made it this far, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.